But the other men had seen him in the window. His tears did not stop, but he turned around and stood on his back of the shop and watched the doctor approach. "Oh, doctor, doctor," he exclaimed. Ryu nodded in acknowledgement, unable to speak. The man's pain was his own, and that the clustering of his heart in the moment was the rage that comes with men confronted with pain that all men must share. "Yes, Gran," he said. "I should like to have the time to write her a letter, so she knows that, and that she can be happy without feeling any remorse." Ryu pushed Gran forward almost violently. The other man did not resist, allowing himself to be dragged along, stammering out a few words. "This is gone on too long. Inevitably, one wants to let oneself go. Oh, doctor, I seem calm for the most time, but it has always been an enormous effort, even to be normal. And now it's too much." He stopped wide-eyed and trembled every limb. Ryu took a hand without burning. "We must go back." But Gran escaped from him and ran a few steps and stopped, held his arm wide, and began to sway backwards and forwards. He reeled over and fell on the icy pavement. His face streaked with tears. He continued to run down his cheeks, and people past the streets looked on from a distance, stopped suddenly without not daring to come forward, and Ryu had to take the old man in his arms. Once in his own bed, Gran struggled to breathe. His lungs were affected. Ryu thought about it. The civil servant had no family. Why move him? He would be alone without Teru to look after him. Gran was pressed into his pillow, his skin greenish and his eyes dull. He stared at the pelty fire and Teru had lit in the grate with the remains of the packing case. "I am not well," he said, and the old crackling sound emerged in the depths of the burning lungs, accompanied by everything he said. Ryu advised him to keep quiet and told him that would come back. The sick man gave a strange smile with it and almost looked at the tenderness rose in his face. "If I get through this, hats off to you, doctor." Immediately after saying this, he fell back in the state of position. A few hours later, Ryu and Teru found him in a half-seat at his bed, and Ryu was horrified to see his face and the progression of the disease that was eating him up. He seemed more lucid at once, and in the strange hollowed voice, asked them to bring him the manuscript from his drawers. Teru gave them the pages and the scraps without looking at them, handed them to the doctor, gesturing him to read it. In the short manuscript, some 50 pages, the doctor left through them and realized that these pages contained only the same sentence copied over and over. "Revoked the maker of the richer and the poorer, ceaseless in the month of May, and the elegant horsewoman, the adventures of the Boris de Barcelona, and made the difference of the ways, and worked the continued explanation the same expressionary long different versions." But by the end of the last page, the ink that was still fresh, the studious hand had simply written, "My dearest Janine, today is Christmas." Above it, mercilessly inscribed the latest version of the sentence. "Read it," said Gran, and Ryu read. On the fine morning in the month of May, the elegant woman was riding the magnificent spoiled mare, and the flowers down the avenue of the Boris de Barcelona. "Is that it?" the old man said feverishly. Ryu did not look up. "Oh," the other man said, moving agitedly, "I know, beautiful, beautiful is the right word." Ryu took his hand on the blanket. "Leave it, doctor. I don't have time." The chest was moving painfully and suddenly cried out, "Burn it." The doctor hesitated, and Gran repeated the order in such a fearful tone, with such a strengthening of his voice, that Ryu threw the sheets into an almost extinguished fire. The room was briefly lit up, and the warm but the stone burst of heat. The doctor came back to the patient, and Gran, who had to take turns with his face, almost touched the wall. Teru was looking out the window, and through the stranger to the scene, injecting the serum. Ryu had told his friend that Gran would not survive the night, and Teru offered to stay. The doctor accepted. Throughout the night, Ryu had haunted by the idea of Gran dying, and yet The following morning he found himself sitting up in bed talking to Drew. His temperature was normal. He showed only the usual symptoms of a complete exhaustion. "Oh, doctor," said the civil servant, "I was wrong. But I'll start again. You'll see, I'll remember everything." "Let's wait," Ryu told Drew. By noon nothing had changed, but the evening Gran could be considered saved, and Ryu could not understand the resurrection. However, at the same time Ryu had brought the patient those cases considered desperate and whom the isolation was soon to be avid in the hospital. The young woman was delirious and presented all symptoms of preliminary plague, and that the next morning her temperature had gone down again. As if Gran's cases, the doctors thought he was witnessing one of the morning remissions of the acceptance, and thought that he considered a bad sign. Yet by noon the temperature had not gone up, and the evening rose the few thirds of the degree, and the next day back to normal. Although the girl was weak, she was breathing freely in her bed, and Ryu told Teru that she was saved, quite unaccompanied, and during the week 4 similar cases appeared in the doctor's practice. At the end of the same week, the old asthmatic came to greet the doctor and Teru with every sign of great agitation. "That's it," he said. "They're coming out again." "Who's coming out?" "Why, the rats." Not a single dead rat had been found since April. Is it going to start again?" Teru asked Ryu. The old man was rubbing his hands. "You should see them run. The sight of sore eyes." He had seen 2 little live rats come out of his house through the street doors. Neighbors had informed him that the creatures were so rampant in the house, behind the walls of the house, but the hustle of the bustle of the had never heard them months. Ryu wanted the general statistics to be published, but they were to start each week. They showed the decline of the deceased.